everyone, my name is Cristina Dominguez and I have the privilege and honor of serving as the Executive Director of La Semilla, and thank you for joining us today. Over the past 10 years, La Semilla has worked to foster a healthy, self-reliant, fair, and sustainable food system in the Paso del Norte border region. We envision a vibrant food system that prioritizes community and environmental health. Through our programs, including La Semilla Community Farm, Farm Fresh, Edible Education, Community Education, and Policy and Community Development, and numerous collaborations, we are working to heal relationships with the land, food, and with one another. Central to La Semilla's vision is the crafting and centering of narratives that uplift community dignity and promote equity and justice. The land we currently call the Paso del Norte region encompasses Las Cruces, New Mexico, El Paso, Texas, and Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. This river valley has provided sustenance for many indigenous peoples before a series of usurpations displaced them, beginning with the Spanish, then the nation-state of Mexico, and most recently the United States. We acknowledge and give thanks to the land and original peoples of the region that we call the Paso del Norte, including those who we currently know as Chiricahua Apache, Mimbreño Apache, Mescalero Apache, Suma, Jocome, Llano, Tapachoa, Manso, Piro, Isleta del Sur Pueblo, Tiwa, and Tortugas Pueblo. The Paso del Norte region, including this farm, reside within the traditional homelands of many indigenous nations fed by the Rio Grande River. And many of us tending this land as fronterizo farmers are descendants of indigenous peoples. But due to forced colonization and forced migration, we are in the process of reconnecting to our indigenous ancestral ties, lost traditions, and heritage. The story of this land is intertwined with our own as human beings, living and working on it. It is an unfinished story that we continuously shape. As people connected to the land and culture, we have a responsibility to integrate past and present stories of foodways in the Paso del Norte region that can inform us as we move forward, challenging and creating alternatives to harmful and extractive systems. In that spirit, La Semilla has established a storytelling department to lead multiple interdisciplinary story gathering and story sharing efforts. Today, we are honored and thrilled to showcase the first product from our storytelling department, a zine titled Food, Land, and Us, a look at the Farm Bill from the Paso del Norte region. Through this presentation, we will introduce you to this important and beautiful zine while providing you with key information about what the Farm Bill is and how it impacts our communities. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce Ruby Orozco Santos, organizational storyteller and co-author of the zine.
Your plate of food is a reflection of what's going on in your community. My name is Ruby Orozco Santos. I'm one of the lead storytellers for the Farm Bill zine. The quote I just read is by Rosalinda Guillen, and it helps kick off our story. I love how brilliantly it encapsulates the concept of food systems, how we are connected to land and to each other. I'm part of an immigrant family, and when we arrived in the Paso del Norte region, I was 8. No one ever explained to me the full story of this land and how what has happened here connected to broader regional and national histories. And I think understanding our literal place in the world, and especially knowing our histories from the perspectives and voices of people of color, Indigenous people, and Black people, knowing that folks have organized for generations to create just and life-affirming systems can be really empowering. And to know that we can act to shape policies that affect us all and that affect the earth and future generations. So now join me and our guests as we guide you through our zine in hopes of shedding light on the Farm Bill, but more importantly, highlighting the critical relationship between land, food, and people. Do you remember when your grandma worked the compost heap? She once said, "It is our duty to help the soil, otherwise it gets tired." She taught us a lot about growing food with love and gratitude for the earth. But the conventional system we have in the United States today puts profit over people and plants. The laws that say how we grow and distribute food are bundled together in the Farm Bill. It rewards the use of machinery and chemicals that harm environments and pollinators. The Farm Bill also includes loans and training for some farmers, but many go into debt to buy the very machinery and pesticides that make the land unusable.
Sus manos el color de barro, tinted in the image of his mother's love. Madre tierra que alimenta. Living memories flow from his hands down to the earth. An ancestral understanding of what it means to care for your mother. A love reflected in abundance. Cuando cuidamos a nuestra madre, nos bendice con abundancia. 8-foot nopales line the borders of his yard. Hearts open to the sun appear as fire-colored cactus blossoms. But unfamiliar with the concept of property, pencas creep over rock walls and migrate like monarchs in March, like those we march in solidarity with for practicing natural patterns. Bulky squared fingers strong enough to plow fields and pick potatoes frame his work-worn hands. His whole life he's known the soil intimately. A relationship buried in roots, costumbres enraizadas en la sangre. A generational knowledge born of his father, grandfathers, and grandmothers. You can take the man out of the rancho, but you can't take the rancho out of the man. You can change our names and our locations, but our values stay the same. My father spent his childhood working the land in Mexico, home of the Chichimecas, Zacatecos, Huachichil, and Huicharitari, until his family was forced north to boundaries mocked by desert winds and feathered spirits. Crossing the border through toxic powdered disinfectants delivered from hoses, he was able to return to the fields, trabajando el campo, to feed a nation and perhaps also his family. At the autumn of his life, he rises early, welcoming the day by stepping among the trees, bringing sacred offerings that yield beautiful harvests. He sits on an upside-down bucket with a knife in hand, knowing the tiny thorns I will later tweeze out of his fingertips are worth every last succulent bite of that tuna. Prickly pear that bears fruit to the hard work and love. But it's never hard work to love. And just like my father and his father and his father, my brother cultivates his relationship with the earth, a bond unknown to lawmakers and capitalists who sit upon a throne of profits, their feet never touching the ground, lifted too high by their delusions. Yet we kneel upon the earth, harvesting greater blessings than their bellies will ever know.
The Farm Bill determines how the United States agriculture-related monies should be spent. Because it includes more than farming, some people have said that the Farm Bill should be called the Food Bill. It is updated approximately every 5 years, and it affects all of us. It is important that we help to shape it. Hello, I am Representative Angelica Rubio. I was born and raised in rural southeastern New Mexico and am the youngest daughter of Mexican immigrants. I am also the daughter of Eduardo, who has cultivated New Mexico farms for most of his 84 years on this beautiful planet. The importance of the Farm Bill is not one of just public policy, but it is one that is very close to my heart. Every day, I work very hard to reflect and acknowledge the history of dispossession, genocide, and slavery at the root of our current system. Reflecting on this history, I am working to actively engage in the learning necessary towards course correcting and addressing the disparities in land access and ownership faced by Black and Indigenous and communities of color, especially here in my great state of New Mexico. I ask so many of you to join me in this evolution. Though food and agriculture are critical for all communities, when we look at the United States' discretionary budget, we see that 57% is allocated to the military, 6% is allocated to education, and 3% is for transportation, and only 1% for food and agriculture. When we break down that 1%, we see that the largest share of the Farm Bill supports important nutrition programs like SNAP, which ensures that people can purchase groceries and seeds for edible plants. Less than 1% of the bill funds are invested in important programs that give back more than they are given. These programs support small and socially disadvantaged farmers and growing practices that keep the earth healthy for future generations. Most farming money in the bill is present on huge farms that are more like factories. The Farm Bill keeps a lot of smaller farmers in debt because they have to buy and use the same kind of machinery and chemicals to receive agricultural payments. So please join advocates like me and others in your local communities to push for our federal representatives, those serving us in Washington, D.C., to not only support the Farm Bill, but to work to make it the most equitable and the most just.
We want to use this moment as a quick check-in to find out what you have learned about the Farm Bill so far. For those joining us on Facebook and YouTube, click the link in the chat to take a quick quiz. Great job, everyone. Thank you for participating and engaging with us today. Now let's jump back into the zine.
No matter where we are in the Americas, the land is the ancestral homeland of indigenous people. Indigenous people here and around the world developed and continue to employ systems to grow and share food that respect the land, make space for nature's cycles, and are steeped in gratitude for the earth's natural resources. In the borderland, before contact with the Europeans, indigenous people enjoyed bountiful meals that included corn, beans, mesquite, wild greens, fruits, and fish. These are some of the same foods many indigenous people grow and eat today. The indigenous ways of life for those in the Paseo del Norte region were brutally disrupted. First, by the Spanish missionaries. Many people of the region were killed in the massive genocide that wiped out 90% of the First Nations people on this continent. In the early 1800s, the US began an aggressive campaign of westward expansion, which the US government systemically stole lands and granted land to those who were recognized as citizens, which forced out Mexican farmers and further displaced indigenous people. The people who took the land under the 1862 Homestead Act are known as homesteaders. Some homesteaders in New Mexico were African American, seeking opportunities after the nominal abolishment of chattel slavery. Though most homesteaders were primarily those of European backgrounds, due to the transatlantic slave trade, some homesteaders were African Americans who sought opportunity in New Mexico. A notable family to recognize is the Morehouse educated preacher and farmer Frank Boyer, who settled in Bottle, New Mexico. Prior to arriving in Bottle, Mr. Boyer was key in founding New Mexico's first all-Black settlement, Blackdom, New Mexico, a place that named farming as a key goal. Hello, my name is Helga Garza, and I'm the Executive Director of Agricultura Cooperative Network and our food access program, La Cosecha. We are a collective of over 40 small-scale farmers, both urban and rural, throughout the central belt of New Mexico, from far north as Jemez Pueblo, all the way down south to Anthony, New Mexico. As a cooperative, we work collectively together to meet larger markets and provide New Mexico-grown fruits and vegetables to many of our communities that otherwise would not have access or opportunity to have at their dinner table organically grown food. Our approach is the self-determination of people and our bottom-up approach to being the navigators of our narrative, of what works for us as farmers and as community. I believe the nutritional needs of our community are better served by our local farmers that grow with those sustainable practices of keeping our soil healthy, addressing climate change factors, and provide the best healthy nutritional value of food that our state can provide for our communities. Thank you. Tlaxocamati and Teo.
The foundations of the agriculture and food policies that we know today as the Farm Bill were first established by the Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1933. The main goals of the initial Farm Bill were to protect the food supply and to support farmers. But the new opportunities it created were not distributed fairly. White farmers were favored with these new opportunities, while several laws across the nation explicitly prohibited people of color from owning land. Lack of full civil rights and representation in federal and local decision-making bodies resulted in unequal opportunities for non-white farmers. Hello, everyone. My name is Ricardo Salvador, and I am the Director and Senior Scientist of the Food and Environment Program at the Union of Concerned Scientists. We partner with citizens, scientists, economists, and politicians to transition our current food system into one that grows healthy foods while employing sustainable and socially equitable practices. Policy is the authority to decide where and how public resources are expended. It is essentially the rules of the system. When systems are designed by you, for you, and with you in mind, the outcome is often that you are explicitly excluding others. Agriculture and food policies, as they are today, tell us a lot about what the authors of these rules take to be a farm, who farmers are, what they grow, where they grow, how they grow it, and for whom. Just one outcome is that if you are a non-white person producing actual food, for example, fruits and vegetables, in an urban or an exurban area, there are not as many resources set aside to support you with technical information, low-cost loans, insurance, or market supports as there are for the big white farmers who produce the feedstocks and commodities of the large-scale industrial system. Marginalized farmers and farm workers increasingly voiced their concerns over the course of the 20th century. The civil rights movement further spurred them to demand change. Lawsuits were filed and won or settled, which highlighted the inequity and inequality being faced by non-white farmers.
Hola, mi nombre es Guadalupe Lugo y soy promotora de educación comunitaria de la Semilla Food Center. Hasta el momento hemos visto un poco de la historia de la ley agrícola de los Estados Unidos y la inequidad que ha perpetuado, pero ¿qué está pasando hoy? Hoy en día vemos que la mayoría de los dueños y operadores de las granjas son personas blancas, pero la gente que trabaja en la cadena de comida, como los trabajadores agrícolas, trabajadores de mataderos y trabajadores de servicio de comida, son principalmente gente de color. Estos incluyen la mayoría de los trabajos peores pagados en los Estados Unidos. El Farm Bill excluye los derechos laborales de los trabajadores agrícolas. La gente que cultiva nuestros alimentos sufre altos niveles de hambre y exposición a pesticidas. No reciben pagos de trabajos de horas extras, permisos de enfermedad o maternidad, y están expuestos a peligros laborales y pesticidas dañinos. Muchos son trabajadores indocumentados, lo cual los hace más vulnerables a peores abusos laborales. Yo tengo la experiencia de vivir aquí en Vado por más de 30 años y fui un trabajador agrícola, y yo recuerdo que en los tiempos que yo trabajé era un trabajo muy duro y tenía que llenar muchos botes para ganarme $20, y lo que he mirado que han pasado muchos años pero nada ha cambiado. La gente sigue igual, trabajando muy duro, a muchas temperaturas muy fuertes del calor y por el mismo sueldo, ¿verdad? Un sueldo que realmente creo que no alcanza para sostener bien a nuestra familia. Muchas gracias.
The Farm Bill dictates everything about food. For example, commodities like wheat, soy, and corn are prioritized in the Farm Bill, which means farmers are incentivized to grow these food over other edible plants and vegetables. The Farm Bill was made by people, and that means that we can change it. It's up to our generation to rethink the intensification of agricultural production. The Farm Bill does not encourage farmers to grow fruits and vegetables, even though they are critical to our health. It doesn't do enough to protect our environment, and it is not informed by those most vital to the food system, like me and you. Farmers and community members just like you can help create solutions that are grounded in equity, human rights, environmental stewardship, and indigenous land sovereignty. Will you join us in this important work?
The best meal that I ever had was at a funeral.
Red chili enchiladas in massive aluminum trays. Maybe they weren't that big, maybe I was just a little kid. But anyway, I don't know if it was the recipe or what made the taste, but I'd like to think it was the family conducted through that day. The worst thing I know is that we're the commodity. I thought I was selling something. Honestly, I was just pitching myself into your jaws. The smith takes EBTs and lives. That's really not funny, God. It's a buffet that requires lives to be involuntarily risked and ecosystems to be skinned, gutted, and doomed. The trick is that the planet and the people are also being consumed. I admit, the hardest part is to imagine that this isn't inevitable, because we've been taught scarcity, even as we grew like peach saplings, but also because it seems like there should be some kind of necessity behind the bad things. This knot of expanding exploitation and starvation is so horrifically avoidable. The land is stolen, the border a scar, and the orchard a forest.
Greetings and welcome, everyone. We are so glad that you are here. Welcome to the launch of Food, Land, and Us. My name is Asia.
And greetings, everyone. I'm Martina, and it's such an honor for us all to be here sharing our stories and holding this very sacred space.
Yes, and speaking of holding space, we'd like to take a moment to acknowledge our ancestors, our elders, and all those who have paved the way and who have come before us and made this day possible and so many other days in our future.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Okay.
We'd also like to acknowledge the funders of this project. Food, Land, and Us was launched with support from the Food and Farm Communications Fund and is supported in part by a Border Narrative Change grant from the National Association of Latino Arts and Cultures and Ford Foundation. Also, what a beautiful way to share these stories in this beautiful zine. So before we get started, I do want to mention that you can check out the zine at lasemillafoodcenter.org/store, where you can do, where you also can purchase it donation based. And also you can go to foodcenter.org/storytelling, where you can download a free PDF.
Wonderful, wonderful. So now we have a wonderful lineup of panelists, and we are going to allow them to introduce themselves. I'm going to call everyone's name, and then if you'd like to take a moment to tell everyone who you are in your own words, then we will go from there. So first, we have Ruby Orozco Santos. Ruby, tell us about yourself. Who are you?
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Asia and Martina, for emceeing today, and everyone behind the scenes in the Fable, Create Your Fable team that is hosting this event. My name is Ruby Orozco Santos. I am the organizational storyteller at La Semilla Food Center and one of the co-authors of the zine. And I am the granddaughter of Amelia Nájera Ibarra, the first storyteller I ever was around.
All right, thank you so much, Ruby, and thank you for being here. I mean that deeply. All right, and next we have Vi Cavero. Vi, welcome. Tell us who you are.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here with all of you today. My name is Vicky Quevedo. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the policy director here at La Semilla Food Center. And I'm coming in today with just a lot of gratitude and a lot of nervous energy, just to, and I just want to thank everyone for making the time and helping us tell this critical story. I'm also one of the co-authors of the Zine. Thank you.
Thank you, V. Thank you, thank you. All right, Zeke Pena, tell us who you are. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Greetings, everyone. My name is Zeke Pena. I am Chicano. I'm a storyteller and an illustrator. And my mother's family is from southern New Mexico, around the area of Las Cruces, and my father's family is from San Antonio, by way of Coahuila and Durango. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be here with you all. I was the illustrator for this project, and I worked really closely with Ruby and V and other folks from the La Semilla team. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really grateful for all the folks who were in the video as well, and everyone who helped produce it. So thank you.
Thank you, Zeke. All right, so next we have Helga Garza. Can you please tell us who you are and welcome?
Hello, everyone, and thank you to La Semilla and everyone involved in this very powerful piece here of communication on the Farm Bill. My name is Helga Garza. I am a native woman here, Azteca Chichimeca ancestry. I am the executive director of Agricultura Cooperative Network. We are a network of small-scale farmers working on food justice collectively together, and have a very strong alliance and respect for all of our compadres and comadres there at La Semilla. So very grateful that we have allies. Having allies is so important in this work, especially when we're talking about food justice, especially when we're talking about self-determination of people and food systems. So I want to give a big shout out to all of us that work together collectively to make our voices that much more stronger.
Much thank you, Helga. Rosalinda, Ian, welcome. Please tell us who you are.
Thank you. Buenas tardes todos. So my name is Rosalinda Guillen. I'm my people, we're Mexican people from Michoacan, Coahuila, and also Texas. And it's an honor to be here with all of you today. I'm a farm worker that has worked the lands in the northwest part of the United States in Washington State, Idaho, and parts of Oregon. And I'm coming to you today from the land of the Swinomish Nation in La Conner, Washington, sitting across from the channel in their reservation. So it's an honor to be here. And this video that I just watched really touched me. It's so wonderful to be here with you all. You are my family.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Next, we have Art Romero, Eat Carver. Art, welcome. Please tell us who you are.
I'm Arte. No worries. I had allergies when I recorded my little portion, so my voice is not, in fact, that gravelly. It's a little bit less gravelly. She, her, and I'm Chicana, Norteña, Northern Mexican. That's what my family is. And I'm a steering committee member at Yucca, Youth United for Climate Crisis Action, as well as back in the day in 2020, I was like the Sanford Youth Poet Laureate. I'm also a co-founder at the School of Now. The main work that I do is like climate organizing work. And I do think that that's like definitely relevant, or at least I've seen the overlap in terms of agricultural work. It's land practice, right? And it has the same results, poisoning and harm, and it's done wrong. Yeah, I'm really honored that I could dare to be on this panel with y'all. Thank you so much for having me.
Arte, we're honored by your presence. Thank you. Lupe Lugo is next. Welcome. Bueno, Lupe, please tell us who you are, who is joined by Marlene, who is Lupe's translator.
Hola a todos, ¿cómo están? Mi nombre es Guadalupe Lugo y soy promotora de educación comunitaria, La Semilla, y el día de hoy me siento muy orgullosa, más que todos los días, de ser una migrante y ser una emigrante trabajadora de los campos, ¿verdad? O sea, mi familia es de México y hoy, después de ver este video, y ya lo había visto antes de, pero me siento muy orgullosa, me da mucha motivación, ¿verdad? Para pelear lo que es nuestras tierras, nuestros suelos, nuestros alimentos. O sea, estoy muy orgullosa el día de hoy de estar aquí con ustedes. Gracias.
Hi, my name is Guadalupe Luco, and I feel very proud to be here today. I am a farm worker from that is currently living in Valle Nuevo, Mexico, and I was an immigrant farm worker. I feel I feel very empowered and wanting to fight, motivated to fight for this land and take it back. Yeah, just very proud to be here.
Gracias, Guadalupe.
Yes, gracias. All right. So, wow, what a beautiful family. Let's jump into this zine, Food, Land, and Us. So, first question, I want to gear this towards Ruby and V, the co-authors of this zine. Can you tell us what was the inspiration behind all of this? Because I know it was a process. Can you share that with us?
Yes, of course. So this project originated from La Semilla's policy team 2 years ago, and which included our current policy director, V, and Kristen Aguilar, who was policy director at the time. And based on their experience educating people about food policy, they saw a need for a tool to make this national food policy accessible for people, and especially for younger audiences. I don't know if you want to add anything, V.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just add that we saw something that was affecting all of us every day, and that had been there had been all of these walls built up around it to really accessing it and to really feeling like any of us have any kind of power over it, and so we really wanted to help people access that and access their power in the shaping of this policy, and we wanted to reverse the work that had been done to ensure folks felt scared off from it or disengaged from it. So we really felt like, what could be, we just started thinking what would make it successful, what would make it, bring this back down to earth for folks to really put their hands in and start working on and start engaging with and start using our collective power to drastically shift the direction of the policy.
And also, I've got inspired here. I'm just gonna add that, we were excited to share a story from our region, as told from here, from our lens here, and a story where youth from our region especially could see themselves represented. I think there might be some students logged on right now from El Paso High, from Miss Sarah's class, so hello. And so also to see the knowledge of their parents and grandparents uplifted. And sometimes, or most often, we don't get to learn our full history in school. And not only the horrors we should not repeat, but also the sources of hope that we can build on, So I think this storytelling project can be so empowering to learn about how future generations envision a better world and organize to bring it into being, and then to think about what we can do now, and now that it's our turn to dream and to contribute and build.
Absolutely, and thank you for that. That is so needed, that people need to see themselves in the art and in the vision, and in the doing. So thank you for contributing that. So we want to expand a little bit, and we want to direct this question at Ruby, Zeke, and V. And you talked about it a little bit, both of you, but more so, what was the process like for gathering the information about the Farm Bill and then showcasing it in a visual way? So Ruby, if you would like to speak to it first, then we'll go ahead and go that way.
Yeah, you know, I think we try to approach it from two angles. And one is like, how does it feel for people every day, right? Like, where do they interact with it? What does it look like, you know, at the grocery store, at the farmer's market? If you're working the land, like how do people interact with it? And then also the bird's eye view of like, well, what is it? How much money is it? How is it distributed? Where does it go? What programs have been shown to be effective? And so we scoured a lot of resources that you can find on the sources pages of our zine, and try to translate that. We really just work together, the three of us, to wrap our minds around this and try to figure out how to make it understandable and visual and interesting. Yeah, I think that's what I have. I don't know if Zeke and V have any notes here.
Go ahead, V. Yeah.
No, Z, you. I think, you know, yeah, a big piece of a big hurdle, and Zeke, I think, you know, you can, you should weigh in on the visual aspect of it, because I'll admit, like at the beginning, I had absolutely no idea how to visually represent the Farm Bill. So that was definitely your genius that helped that all of a sudden become so so real and so beautiful and so powerful. But in terms of just going through the history and the, you know, the generations of folks before us who have worked on the Farm Bill, right, and reading as much as possible from food justice leaders, for to really get first grounded in the tangible pieces, and the pieces that work versus the pieces that don't work. I think that was really critical, and it was a lot, and it was just years, honestly, just years of absorbing. But once the process started with Ruby and Zeke, it I don't know, it would just sort of took on a life of its own, I think. But Zeke, definitely share a little bit about the visuals, because
Yeah, I felt the same. I think starting on this project, that I was unclear as to how to illustrate something like this. But I think that the approach that I took was, as someone who is unfamiliar with these topics. I was very unfamiliar with the Farm Bill, and so I really relied on all of the expertise and hard work that Ruby and V were doing to gather the information and the critical information that should be included. And I always just kind of tried to keep that objective kind of lens, or the objective viewpoint, and always thinking about a young reader. How can I make something as clear as possible so that a young person can read it? Because if a young person can understand it, then most people are going to be able to understand it. And then translating it into visuals, I mean, I would say that it was also with the help of Ruby and V coming up with ideas and concepts for visuals, reference material, photographs, and just compiling just a big folder of, you know, images and references, and then just going from there and seeing what worked, and trying different things. And it was a very long editing process, redrawing things and trying to figure stuff out. But I think that was kind of the initial approach was as someone who didn't understand this. And so I was also trying to explain it to myself a little bit.
All right, beautiful. Well, I just want to say the zine is pure genius. I love the way you all presented the information. It was the storytelling for me, you know, the storytelling and the art behind it. Zeke, I love the pictures, you know, whether you're well versed in the Farm Bill or this is something totally new. It was such a joy to go through it, and it made perfect sense as you went through the pages. So great work to you all on that. So I have a question that I'm going to pose to a few people because I want to hear, like you said, different perspectives. You know, I know we're all tuning in from different areas. So that question is, so the two words, I want to say two things: food justice and food sovereignty. We've been hearing a lot about that lately, right? Which is a great thing. But what does that truly mean? There's a lot that goes to it, right? So I'm going to first ask Helga, do you mind speaking on from your experience? What would you say food justice and food sovereignty are? What do those terms mean to you?
Okay, food justice is, again, the self-determination of how we want to grow our food, how we want to preserve our cultural traditional practices. Food justice is saying we do not want to participate in the global food market. We want a just way to feeding our families, building an environmental economy on the practice of our resilience in growing food. As Native people, I know the new buzzwords are sustainable and regenerative, but we've always been sustainable and regenerative in growing our food. We've always been at the forefront as caretakers and stewards of the land. And that's what connects us to sovereignty. Sovereignty is that connection that we have as Native, Indigenous, gente de movimiento, that we say we are so connected to the land, to the water, to the seed, and to the life force that food is. That's sovereignty. We do not look at it as a capitalist commodity. We look at it in the sovereignty connection, sovereignty way of thinking. We connect with it because we understand its life force. That's why we protect future generations' ability to grow food. And we become the land stewards for the next generation. That's sovereignty. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Decolonizing some of these terms, just hearing those words. What is food justice and food sovereignty? It's us. It's who we are. We are an extension of that, the whole life force. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Helga. Rosalinda, do you mind speaking on what is food justice and sovereignty to you?
Well, the way, excuse me, the way that, first of all, I want to say that I'm the founder of Community to Community Development, the Comunidad a Comunidad, which is a women-led farm worker organization in Washington State. And food sovereignty has always been at the core of our mission, our vision, our strategic thinking, and our directions that we set for ourselves. We're ecofeminists in our organization. And so our definition for ourselves and our organizing and our liberation work has shifted and evolved with time. And so we call ourselves ecofeminists because it's very much similar to what Helga said, that we are protecting Mother Earth, and as women, our time has come to take our power and our position in being on the front lines of that protection. So when we look at food sovereignty, we consider food sovereignty to be the goal of all of the work of many, many intersections of undoing colonialism and racism and patriarchy and capitalism. The goal is that food sovereignty will be reached when you really are looking at the plate in front of you and the food that you're eating and know that this food that you're about to eat is culturally appropriate to your ancestral traditions, to where you come from and who you are. And you have the clear sense and knowledge that the food that you are about to put in your mouth has not exploited Mother Earth, has not exploited another human being, has treated creatures that are part of the plate, even if you must have them, in a dignified, respectful way, that food that you are about to put in your mouth is actually joy and health and sustainability and resilience, and that you are eating something that has not harmed or hurt any creature, any human being, or Mother Earth. And when you reach that moment, you know that the job of organizing and organization building and relations between humans, creatures, and Mother Earth are in balance. That is the ultimate goal. And everything that we do is looking at that, including policy, direct action, everything that we look at as farm workers, it encompasses all of that. And if you were to try to do that today and say, I'm not going to eat food unless I know that these things are true, you would have to grow it yourself, as Helga was saying. You would have to grow it yourself directly with your own hands, or know without a doubt. But if you could not do that, you would starve to death, because our food system as it exists today is not a food system. It is commodities for profit. So we really consider that direction that we want to go to. And we are literally eating exploitation. We're eating suffering. We're eating destruction. The way that everything is set. And the Farm Bill is central to that. And I want to say that the way the Zine was produced, it's the most beautiful way of explaining policy to everybody in our communities, especially the farm worker communities who know nothing about it.
Thank you so much, Rosalinda, for your words. Thank you for your work. Does anybody else on the panel, would anyone else like to share what food justice and food sovereignty mean to them?
I could mention a little bit. So I just want, this is going to be a terrible way to start this off, but I don't think I have any qualifications to speak really on what food sovereignty or food justice should be necessary. I think there's people on this panel with a lot more education and cultural knowledge, traditional knowledge to map out a better world. I do want to talk a little bit about the rhetoric around the language though, because what food justice, and I don't know if it's been appropriated in the same ways, what's a word like food justice reminds me a lot of is the term climate justice. And the organizing work that I've done, an increasingly popular word and then become an increasingly meaningless and appropriated term. One of the most bizarre things, there's legislation where people refer to communities of color, specifically Black, Indigenous, and Latinx communities, as climate justice communities. So you get these weird levels of euphemism. Anyway, the point that I want to make is that in talking about I don't know if it's been appropriated in the same ways, but when people talk about climate justice, there's often a disservice done where we don't really talk about climate injustice. We kind of talk about the thing that we would like to, the thing that a promised world could have. We don't talk about the current issue. We don't talk about the current injustice. For climate change, that means a variety of things. I will say one piece I do have a little bit of knowledge on in terms of food injustice, right? What is happening right now in the way that, and it was already articulated, but the market system is doing these things that are, and I think it's important to articulate, in service of genocide, right? It's not just about commodification. It is also about the harming of people and the taking of lives. and the harm, specifically of specific communities. The term food desert, or the term that V actually acquainted me with, food apartheid, right? When you have entire neighborhoods where that freedom, that sovereignty that we're talking about is not accessible, where the food that you can purchase, if you have the money to purchase it, is either A, not going to be of high quality, you're not going to know where it's sourced from, etc. And then you're also incentivized, if you're working for very little pay, if you're trying to feed a family, to go to Taco Bell, where you can get a lot of food for very cheap, very quickly, right? Taco Bell does not necessarily ensure a better world for future generations. A lot of other issues with Taco Bell, but that's not necessarily my point. My point is that I can't really speak to what a better world can look like, but I also think it's important that, like, when we're talking about the ways that our food system is failing, it isn't just that it isn't good enough, it's that it is specifically bad and specifically white supremacist and genocidal, and that the way that it's continuing to operate cannot be tolerated.
Thank you so much, Arte, for bringing that up. Terminology is so important, right? Food desert makes you think that there may not be food available, when actuality, there's food, but is it culturally relevant? Do we have self-determination to determine how our food is grown, right? So thank you so much. Food apartheid, indeed. Thank you so much for bringing that piece in. All right. So
And may I just interject? I just want to, sorry, I just want to thank Karen Washington, who is the food activist and leader who coined that term, maybe even, was it almost a decade ago now, or 5 or 6 years? I've lost track of time. But right, yeah, we really when we learned that word, we were so appreciative of that framing, that understanding that hunger is a human-made problem, right? And the desert is naturally occurring and abundant. And so when Karen Washington brought that term forward, it put a lot of pieces into place for us, especially growing food in the desert, right? Especially for those of us who live in the desert. We really, it's really critical to use the right words, and to also, to at this point, like, understand that they are going to be co-opted and that people are going to dilute them and water them down. And we will sub in words that maybe make white folks more comfortable, right? Or that honestly just dilutes the work that we're really trying to do, right? People, even like, then they're good and beautiful words like justice and equity and things that are important, right? But really, sometimes people say that instead of talking about white supremacy, naming white supremacy, specifically saying that we're here to do anti-racism work, right? And so I just wanted to kind of try and bring that into the room and acknowledge that beautiful words, important words can be pulled away, and sometimes we do need to be very explicit about the actions we're wanting to take and the policies that we need to move forward, because we can't have hundreds of years of explicitly racist policies and then expect neutral policies to somehow correct them, because they never can, right? Thank you for letting me interrupt there.
Of course, thank you so much, V, for saying that. I think sometimes we find ourselves in the mode of code switching, instead of speaking on what it is and what it needs to be. So yes, that was an important interruption to remind us all the direction. So, all right, is there anybody else that would like to answer that question? Okay. All right. So, oh yes.
Well, no, I just wanted to go back. I am just so honored to listen to your words, because it's refreshing. And it's nice to know, like I said, that we're among family in this. But to me, the most important word that keeps ignored and we look at is sovereignty, because really that's what we're looking for, is sovereignty. Helga mentioned it also, but I mean, I think that we are not sovereign as people right now when it comes to eating. And eating is one of the most, I mean, if we don't eat, we die. It's like food is such a conquering weapon that has been used continuously in genocide and in colonialization in this country, in the United States, especially with so many of us. And I think it is true. And that's why this Farm Bill zine is so important, because policy is the weapon or the tool that helps in that colonialization and that conquest of our traditions and who we are as a people. So I'm again grateful of the way that this zine puts out the policy, because right now there are policies being developed that are hurtful to this whole entire vision. And I just wanted to make sure I got this in here. We are in a horrific battle right now, policy battle, fighting the Farm Workforce Modernization Act, which is a broadly sweeping act that is going to increase the H-2A guest worker program. And we all know what the Bracero program was. And we know that this is the modernization of the Bracero program. It stands to shift the Farm Bill, the US Department of Agriculture, and labor, the farm workers and all labor in agriculture. And I wanted to make sure that you all remember that. It's the Farm Workforce Modernization Act. It is being negotiated as an immigration farm worker legalization bill. It is not. It is a corporate profit-making vehicle for corporate agriculture in the United States to increase a controllable workforce that is going to be imported in from Mexico. And right now they are negotiating the importation of workers from El Salvador. So this is a continuation of the system that our brother just talked about, Arte, a few minutes ago, but it is horrific. It is modern. It's being brought in a sweeping way, and please oppose the Farm Workforce Modernization Act.
Thank you so much, Rosalinda, for bringing that up. And actually, this actually goes into our next question. So if you have more to add to that after I ask this question, then please do. We're going to open this question up to everyone on the panel. So it is, so what parts of the Farm Bill are critical, that you think are critical, and then which ones work in favor of small farms that you all see?
Helga, do you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you. It's hard to answer this question because at the root of the Farm Bill, it was always racist. It was not made for us. And it continues to be racist and is not made for us. So the programs that they put out that are supposed to help, and this are how they frame us: disadvantaged farmers, disadvantaged small scale farmers, disadvantaged opportunity zones. That is how they identify us. So they were never, those programs still don't fit communities like ours. And I can make comment to that because our organization throughout our 10 years has applied to those programs. And we have never to date received any of them. So are they made? And we're a cooperative of 40 small scale farmers distributing 4,000 pounds of New Mexico grown fruits and vegetables every week. So how is it that we don't fit any of their programs? Because they were not made for us. So it's hard to say, you know, does any of the Farm Bill work specifically for small scale farmers, traditional, culturally? My answer is no, but they hold all of the power and all of the money when it comes to food systems. So how do we penetrate that? By being actively involved. And I can say it doesn't work for us because we took the time to apply. We took the time to learn their system and their process. So that's parts of the pieces that we have to do. Now, when they come to us and say, oh, be on this session and let us know what is not working. Well, we are on there letting them know what is not working. And we have to keep our piece within our state active in policy, where we keep addressing these with our federal legislators and committees, where we have a little bit more of an in-depth piece when we go to that level of the federal level. And we continue to say what is not working for us and why it's not working for us. So those are the pieces that we make, because it is a lot of money and it is the control of the food system. So if all we can do is say why it's not working, how it's not working, and calling it out, which many of our communities have done. I mean, there's lawsuits that haven't even been addressed yet that are 10 years old. People have died waiting in addressing these lawsuits. So I think it's how we stay actively involved. And we know that it may take generations for change, but we can make it happen collectively together by calling it out. And we are calling it out what it is. It was never from the beginning made other than to find ways to steal our land, steal our way of life, and try to make it into a commodity that we didn't fit into. So that's our part on how we are addressing how we can make it work. It may not be in this generation, but now it has come to a part in our generation where it is being called out, where they are being held accountable. And we're hoping that that type of impact that we are having can make those changes. Thank you.
I wanted to say that the Farm Bill is one of those tools to keep us hambriados, desesperados, keep us in always needing and just at the very level of surviving. And we have also tried to get USDA grants. We actually did receive one at one point, but the administrative component of reporting and sustaining the grant required a full-time person, and that is not sustainable for us. And it's deliberately written, and this is where beautiful language is written into a bill and into a grant process that turns out to be debilitating for our organizations. It doesn't work the way that they say it works, to even if you do get money from the Farm Bill. So my thinking is that being united and in solidarity and in communication like we are now is really important for our communities at a larger scale across states and communities, so that we can create the alternatives. And I think the alternatives is what Helga is talking about, and the promotoras de educación en la comunidad, for us all to develop the alternative process so that we don't need their money, right? And that's really hard to do because we're poor. And we're developing worker-owned cooperatives, farming cooperatives. Tenemos la primera cooperativa, Tierra y Libertad. We've got 65 acres and we're producing, and we're working to have other worker-owned co-ops. But I mean, the Farm Bill is going to become increasingly more menacing, and it's going to be a concentration of agricultural corporate wealth. And Vlasic is preparing, within the Farm Workforce Modernization Act, they're preparing to move farm labor oversight from the Department of Labor to the Department of Agriculture. And that is really, really dangerous. I believe that we can create alternatives, and we should work together to create those alternatives. And it is possible to do that. And because of, I saw a question about climate change, because of the changing climate, our time is limited to what we're able to do. So having the zine represented in the way that it is, one of the most dangerous things that bills like the Farm Act do is make us think that the reason we're poor and we can't succeed is because it's our fault that we can't access these levels of resources that they put in front of us. And so explaining the history of the Farm Bill to our community is really important. And it's very valuable for organizations like ours. Thank you.
Y'all are touching on some beautiful points here and things to bring forward with us as we go forward. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to this?
Yeah, I'll try. I would just yeah, the Farm Bill has always been this strange, unwieldy piece of policy, right? It's nearly 1,000 pages, and it has rural energy components to it, right? It has conservation components to it, and it has the nutrition title, right? So it has the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, in it. So I can't help but wonder, and it's been brought up so many times by folks before me, for folks working on this since its very first inception, in the 30s. Eventually they added SNAP to it, and I think it goes to Rosalinda's point about like keeping us attached to these things that are bad for us, right? As long as this country is committed to paying poverty wages, we're going to have folks who are hungry. And so we have to fight for the Farm Bill because we have to fight for SNAP, and we have to fight for SNAP because we have, is it close to 35 million hungry people in this country, right? So New Mexico has one of the highest rates of hunger as well in the country. 1 in 5 people and 1 in 3 children go hungry every day, right? So we have to fight for SNAP expansion and make sure folks have food stamps and folks have access to food. But we are doing this because we're subsidizing Amazon, and we're subsidizing Walmart, and we're subsidizing corporations who refuse to pay people a living wage, right? So this interconnection of racism, of classism, and this insistence on a certain structure is all part of what we're fighting with the Farm Bill. It's moving a massive amount of money, and what can we do to shift where that money is going so that it can come back home to our communities and to not continue to destroy the earth. Yeah, folks definitely don't want to talk about water or climate chaos when they're talking about ag, but conventional agriculture, industrial agriculture, monocropping, concentrated animal feeding operations, these are all contributors to climate chaos. Polluting our water, compacting our soil, horrible, nightmarish conditions for folks who work in these situations. And this is all sort of assumed to be inevitable and treated as inevitable, as a commitment and a dependency to extractive industries is inevitable, but our folks not being hungry is somehow one of the things that's just treated as inevitable, while people are making billions and billions of dollars off of this system, right? So we have frameworks. There is a Native Farm Bill. There are Indigenous groups working, First Nations Development Institute, Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative, Intertribal Agriculture Council, to put the Indigenous perspective and Indigenous rights to the Farm Bill. The Justice for Black Farmers Act, introduced last November and then reintroduced this year in 2021, is an incredible framework for justice, establishing an independent civil rights board and equity commission to examine and repair harm that has been done by the food system. And it would establish a socially disadvantaged farmer and rancher banking system and training programs, funding for renewable energy programs and again, it's a terrible phrase, the socially disadvantaged farmer and rancher. It should definitely be called extracted from farmer and rancher, right? Or exploited farmer and rancher. But it has a very robust set of guidelines that could start to shift power and shift resources, return land, repay debt. And so these are some of the components that we look at that we just really want folks on to help us advocate for and to join us and to learn with us and to organize with us to shift where the national funding for food and agriculture goes.
Thank you so much, V. So many things, so many great things to think about for us to unpack and take back to our communities. Thank you. So I'm going to pose this question to Guadalupe. Guadalupe, as the promoter with La Semilla Food Center, how does food policy intersect with your lived experience and work? And feel free if anyone else would like to chime in, but I would love to hear from Guadalupe.
Bueno, yo toda mi experiencia que la tengo es trabajando como trabajadora agrícola. Luego que Marlene me hizo una pregunta hace rato, o sea, antes, que cómo sentía esta ley, que si era como abuso, y luego le digo, lo malo es que no sentimos, o sea, cuando venimos y trabajamos aquí en los campos, en la tierra, con sueldos tan bajos, que no nos damos cuenta al principio que están abusando de nosotros, que nos están pagando muy poco, o sea.
Okay, so Lupe is saying that in her experience as a farm worker and immigrant, one of the things that she didn't know when she first arrived was that there was a multitude of abuses and exploitation to farm workers, because you know, where she's coming from, and when she came in Mexico, things felt so much worse. So she didn't know that there was all of these exploitative systems in place.
Sí, le digo que hasta hoy en día que conozco tanto, que hablamos y miramos, o sea, digo, o sea, wow, ¿cómo trabaja uno tan duro, y apenas te alcanzas? O sea, realmente es como dicen ustedes, o sea, ¿cómo hace uno la decisión si comer o vestir a tus hijos, verdad?
Yeah, so what she's saying is that today, now that she has seen and she has talked to other people, despite, you know, all the work, like really hard work that they did as farm workers, that it was still really difficult to make ends meet. And so it's been really hard to make it work.
Hoy en día, por eso es que me encanta este trabajo, porque puedo resaltar los valores de mi origen, de dónde soy, de dónde vengo. O sea, quiero que la gente así trabajadora como yo se sienta orgullosa de quién es y dónde viene.
So that's part of the reason why she's really proud today to do the work that she's doing, because through this work, she's able to elevate all of the customs and traditions of her people and her ancestry and where she comes from.
Y que solo peleamos por nuestro derecho, nuestro derecho a cultivar nuestras tierras. No queremos ser trabajadores, queremos tener el derecho de tener nuestras propias tierras y tener nuestros propios alimentos.
So that's why she feels like it's really important to be able to fight, not only to be able to cultivate and grow food, but to be able to be owners of that land and be able to grow their own food.
Y es solo recobrar, o sea, recobrar lo que era nuestro, lo que nos pertenece. O sea, no queremos depender de nadie y queremos ser trabajadores y sentirnos orgullosos solamente de quiénes somos y a dónde vamos. Gracias.
So she's saying that she wants to be able to take back what was taken away, to be able to kind of sort of not foot the bill, but like have somebody foot the bill for what, all those losses that they suffered. And that she's very proud to be able to fight for this work and move things forward. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Guadalupe. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your experience and also just, adding on how we can get involved. Would anyone else like to add in how can people get involved in helping to shape Farm Bill?
I gotta leave very soon, so I'll just stop it quick. I just want to mention, okay, so this is a little harsh, but like Western land practice has fundamentally failed in a way that no other land practice in human history ever has, just by the metric of will it kill most of the human civilization, if not end it immediately. It's a simple metric, it's failed that metric, right? So whether we're talking about agriculture or we're talking about climate change, a fundamental change in the way that like how this assortment of people on this continent right now relate to the land and the agricultural space around them needs to happen very soon. We have maybe 7 years. We don't have enough time. And so I'll just say very quickly, in the limited amount of time that I've been trying to change policy around land practice in the United States, and especially in the state of New Mexico, my experience is that interacting with elected officials is very useful. Sending, your statements to representatives is very useful. But we've already described how these laws exist with the explicit goal of harm. And these institutions, we're talking about a colonial settlement, the most well-armed colonial settlement in the world. So if we're going to make any difference in that policy, we have to come into the space with leverage. And leverage is achieved often historically through grassroots mobilization and protest, be that civil disobedience, be that strikes, be that sit-ins. I would just caution that these are problems created intrinsically from within a given system. And that we are not going to have any means of changing those unless we're also operating both inside and outside of that system. And I would really, my advice is always like widespread decentralized resistance. Also, thank you so much, Guadalupe. I was really valuable to hear. I'm so sorry I have to leave. Thank you all for your teaching or for your attendance.
Arte, thank you so much for joining us, and your words were very valuable. So thank you so much, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Okay, all right. So we are getting closer to the time, but we did have a few audience questions that we wanted to just quickly go over. So if anyone would like to answer them. Some of these were being asked during the time. So this question was by Barbara McKenna. So, well, we already talked about that one. We'll go to the other one by Barbara. So how is the Farm Work Modernization Act connected to the Farm Bill, and is the Farm Bill up for renewal soon? In a few years, actually. And so what actions can individuals take to redirect these bad policies that are being described? So I believe Helga and Rosalinda both were speaking on these subjects in particular.
I would just like to quickly say that anything that has to do with workers, with farm workers and agricultural labor, has everything to do with the Farm Bill and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And you can't address one without the other, which is why the high interest right now in the Farm Workforce Modernization Act. It's almost like the ultimate policy to controlled labor as close to slavery as a profit-making agricultural industry can make. Once that happens, and the fact that the Secretary of Agriculture, Vilsack, was at a Senate hearing just a few weeks ago speaking on the Farm Workforce Modernization Act, means that there's going to be an insertion of this into the U.S. Department of Ag that will have tremendous impact on the Farm Bill. So I think contacting Vilsack and telling him to focus on the components that the policymaker for, the policy leader for La Semilla, I'm sorry, I forgot her name, I believe, which the good components of the Farm Bill that need to be strengthened, he should be focusing on that, and he should be keeping his nose out of agricultural labor and give it back to the unions where it belongs, and not the United Farm Workers, but small independent agricultural unions like Familias Unidas por la Justicia in Washington State. The UFW does not speak for all of us. And so he needs to pay attention to food and improvement in protecting Mother Earth, water and infrastructure, and stay out of our lives. I just get really angry about this. Sorry.
No, please don't be sorry. It's extremely frustrating. I mean, we definitely agree. If the Farm Workforce Modernization Act got added into the Farm Bill in any way, it would definitely be one of the worst things to happen. It's hard to say one of the worst things because there've been a lot of bad things. It's a holdover from the Bracero program. It extends H2A, as Rosalinda has said before. It was also written during 45's administration. So it was written by some extremely conservative policymakers with very racist intentions, and I don't think that should be watered down or to pretend that it is something it isn't. It also, ensures that there continues to be no labor rights for the workers who fall under the program, and then the pathway to citizenship that people are trying to glom onto is an 8-year wait. So that's not a pathway, and it would only, it only would apply to just a fraction of the workforce. There's no part of the bill that is okay, and yet it is being touted as some sort of like immigration solution. And so I think it is really critical people write to the representatives, call their representatives, email folks, organize locally, join groups that are already organizing to say that this is not okay. And because the bill has passed the House and the Senate at this point, and work for the upcoming Farm Bill is already starting. So we want to avoid that being put in any way. I know that on Tuesday, as part of the budget reconciliation, Congress did pass another pathway to the citizenship. Unfortunately, there's no language right now under like who qualifies. Certainly advocacy groups are saying that farm workers need to be front and center in that, but we haven't seen like what the timeline would be and what the process would be. So we just have to be really vigilant. This is the one that they passed on Tuesday is looking positive, because it's not part of the H2A program, and it is being supported by a lot of immigration justice groups, but we don't have the language yet. They haven't finalized the definitions of who is eligible for it yet. So we're sort of in a holding pattern, but definitely getting hold of folks and letting them know that you support immediate amnesty, immediate citizenship, immediate, because these folks are our neighbors and our relatives, and they're growing our food and feeding us every single day. And we need to reverse direction on this element of our food system.
Thank you so much for your input, V. Once again, definitely thoughtful information that we can continue to put into action within our communities and to bring forward. So very, very informational. Thank you. All right. So we have our last question from the audience, and then we will go into wrapping up unless there's anything else that anyone from the panel would like to add. This question is specifically for Guadalupe. This is by Adrian Angulo. So El Vado seems to be a place for tourists and another place for farm workers. So two different places basically. So do you feel like you have the opportunity to go outdoors and enjoy your environment, or is it different for you in your experience?
A ver, dime otra vez. Disfrutar de tu vida. O sea, sí, honestamente sí. Yo viví en California 8 años y el momento que llegué a Vado, se me hace como un pedacito de México, ¿verdad? Yo siento como que estoy un pedacito de México, ¿verdad? Tal vez por todos los recuerdos que hay ahí.
She says that yes, she does feel like she can actually do that. She used to live in California for 8 years, and coming back to live in Valo has made her feel like Valo is a little piece of Mexico.
Porque todavía tenemos, cuando yo empecé a vivir ahí, yo tengo 33 años, o sea, hay mucho sembradío de alfalfa y hay mucha gente tiene árboles, plantas, entonces sí siento, sí me gusta, y me siento, cómoda. Ahí somos todos latinos, inmigrantes, la mayoría, entonces sí, estoy muy a gusto.
She's saying that she has lived in Valo for 33 years now. And in Valo, there is a lot of agriculture. There's alfalfa, there's a lot of trees. And there's also a large Latino community, which is important. So yes, really, she does feel comfortable there.
All right. Thank you so much for that. So I would like to thank everyone for, holding the space and really just allowing us to all come together to share these stories. Before I pass the mic over to Ruby, who has some closing remarks, I just want to remind everyone that you can check out this wonderful zine. I'm going to give you 2 different areas where you can get a free, you can flip it for free at lasemiafoodcenter.org /store. That's actually where you can make a donation. And the other website where you can download it, 1 second, please. I just want to make sure you're getting the correct information to get this wonderful stuff. Okay, so lasemiafoodcenter.org /storytelling. And this is where you can also look at it online, okay? So I'm gonna pass the mic over to Ruby. And once again, I wanted to thank everyone here today.
Thank you so much. I wanna say how much I've learned in this panel and listening to you all, your powerful voices. And I wanna say that, that this project really schooled me in a lot of ways, learning all the layers of the story, starting with the river. I know that Zeke already had a relationship with river storytelling before. And also, learning from folks like Patricia Riggs, who's an indigenous consultant and citizen of Isleta del Sur Pueblo, Andrea Everett from Isleta del Sur Pueblo, a tribal member, Dr. Timothy Nelson and Marissa Roybal, who guided us on the history of Blackdom, and Ricardo Salvador, Dr. Ricardo Salvador, who guided us on policy review from the Union of Concerned Scientists. And I think that, we're taught that, or made to believe that the conventional agricultural system, there's nothing wrong with it, that it is so abundant and it feeds so many and it's the solution. And it's actually been very illuminating to learn in which way specifically, in all the ways that it is not, and I think that doing this research and telling this story stretched me in some ways, right? And I invite readers to allow themselves to stretch and to see that full and honest history, and to listen to the voices of Black people, Indigenous people, and people of color who are voicing, the stories from our perspective and from our lived experience. And for me, I'm not from here, from this region. And the first time I was in an all English classroom, I was in 5th grade. And I remember reading out loud in social studies class with my class. And it was the first time I saw the phrase manifest destiny, And it just did, like, it really shocked me, and it didn't make any sense to me that any people should have the right to take the land because they said their God said so, you know? And I remember I looked up and I was expecting other people to look up, and I was expecting maybe our teacher to ask us what we thought about that, but she didn't, and we just kept reading. And so for me, seeing that concept go unquestioned made me tense up, you know, and it made me feel that as an immigrant Mexican child, that brown bodies and communities like mine were still vulnerable, you know? And it started to make me, I was 10 years old. From there, I started to think about inequity and to notice, you know? And so I wanna invite folks to learn the fuller history, you know? And to, you know, to face that even like me, I'm a Mexican immigrant. The Mexican government did unspeakable violence on these lands against Apache people. And reading the accounts really, really, really was an invitation to think about my life and my responsibilities, not from a place of shame, right? But from a place of fearless growth and connection and commitment to healing. And so I hope that this project of honest history really invites people to sit with the complexity. You know, my colleague Michelle says complexity can be an opportunity to learn. And I think that illuminating the underbelly of our shared history is a very powerful opportunity for true unity, and not a superficial unity that demands that some of us be silent so that others can be comfortable, you know. So I'm your student to everybody here, and I thank you so much.
All right, so that does conclude the panel discussion. Once again, we just want to thank everyone for being here. I mean, presence is everything, as we know, and as we have explored today, presence in your words are everything. So thank you all once again for being here. Thank you to the audience for tuning in. Thank you for La Semilla Food Center, and everyone who has contributed to this project. For everyone that is listening, tuning in live, please feel free to share this with your friends, your family, everyone that is interested or may need a little bit more information to get involved. This is I can't stress how important it is. It's affecting lives, families, and generations to come. So thank you, everyone. It has been an honor for all of us to gather here in this time, in this space. And if we don't have any other closing remarks, we would like to wrap it up and check us out. Thanks. Peace.